not shown the first few seconds. I'm waiting for it to say live videos. Oh, okay. Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So I get this question a lot. I got it about 6 months ago, but I haven't dealt with it in 6 months, so I'm going to again. So the question is, how do you find an attorney, a real estate attorney that's going to represent you when you go into contract on a property or close on the property? So either to wholesale it or to flip the property, wholesale the property, whatever you're doing with it. And how much do they cost? So obviously the answer is it depends, right? Because it depends where you are. So I can talk about where I am, which is near New York City. I'm in the suburbs in Long Island. And if you need an attorney well, we'll get into that. So let's talk about how much they cost first, even though it's the second part of the question. So in general, to represent you contract on closing on a deal, most attorneys will charge between $1,000 and $3,000. I would say 2,000 is probably the average, but that's how much it costs. Some attorneys will charge different amounts if you're assigning the contract because is it a closing? It's sort of a closing, but you have to negotiate these things, and you can negotiate it. Now, the better question is, how do you find one? So we've discussed this a lot, and I'm going to discuss it more in length. You should never, ever, ever, ever use an attorney who is not proficient in assigning contracts if you want to assign contracts. Now, every attorney understands the concept of assignment of contract. Every attorney does, right? They learned it in law school. They know what it is. It's pretty simple. But if your attorney hasn't really done them, you shouldn't use your attorney for that. You should get a different attorney. Now, this is the basic gist of how it works. There are, I should look up how many attorneys are there in around New York City. I don't know. There's 100,000 attorneys in around New York City. And maybe 10%, 10,000 of them say they do real estate. Of that 10,000, I would say maybe 1%. So 100 of them really know how to do assignments of contract on residential properties. You should use someone who does. Now, if you want recommendations, I have a great attorney who's got office in the city and Long Island. He's also sort of in Rockland. I also have good attorneys up in the other parts of Hudson Valley, like Orange County and up there. But if you want an attorney like in other parts of the country, like Oneonta, I don't know attorneys there. Now, I have contacts in other parts. I have a good friend in Buffalo. I know people in Rochester. If you need people there, I can probably ask them for an attorney. But I can't vouch for that attorney. I can just tell you who they recommend. But I think the key is when you call an attorney, you say, "Hey, I'm thinking about wholesaling real estate. Are you familiar with assignment of contracts?" If they say anything other than sure, you should hang up. Well, say thank you and find another attorney. So, especially if these guys start telling you how it's illegal, right? That's the worst, right? These are guys who not only don't know how to do it, but they're going to discourage you from doing it because they are ignorant of the law and how things work. I can tell you that in every state, and certainly New York, there are hundreds of contracts being assigned every single week. So there are attorneys who do the bulk of them. And if you don't use my attorney, I have other attorneys who I've used on the other side of a transaction who I think are very, very good. And there are a bunch of good attorneys in New York. There's only a few attorneys who really stink. And I'm actually suing one of them now. And when that comes through, I will absolutely be able to tell you what this jerk off's name is because he is a disaster and everyone should avoid this guy. But there are plenty of good attorneys. But the key is somebody who's comfortable doing it, who has the document, who has the assignment document ready to go, who is familiar with what's going to happen, who is able to say or not say things to the other side that might cause problems. A lot of the issue with an attorney at the contract stage is getting the contract assignable. And there is some negotiation there, right? And some attorneys on the other side, and you can't pick the attorney on the other side. The seller's attorney is going to be whoever they pick. It could be their cousin, their brother. Oh, and let me say this: do not use your cousin or brother to represent you. Okay, I don't care if he's saving you money. If he doesn't know what he's doing, it'll hurt you, right? So don't use someone you're very close with because you need to be able to get rid of them, right? I used an attorney originally, and he was a friend, and I stopped using him because he really wasn't answering the phone and didn't have anybody working for him to answer the phone. And it was a point of contention, right? It took several years for our relationship to get back to where it was. It was a mistake. Right? Don't use a friend. And don't use an attorney who doesn't really do real estate. And that means that if your attorney does matrimonial law and he says he does real estate, he's not a real estate attorney, right? The way it works with matrimonial law is you're dealing with divorces, and very often they have to sell the house. Whoop-de-doo. And guess what? Selling a house in general, a typical sale of a house from seller A to buyer B is a simple, no-brain transaction. But when you get investment involved and there's the possibility of assignment of contract or of double closing, you need somebody who's very familiar with it. So don't use someone who just happens to do real estate, right? He's a personal injury attorney, but he happens to do real estate, right? He's a Medicaid attorney, elder law attorney, but he happens to do real estate. Yeah, a lot of times in Medicaid, they sell the house, they sell a property so that people can become eligible for Medicaid. That's not a real estate attorney. So how do you find one? If you're in and around New York City, you can ask me. If you're in other parts of the country where I know, other parts of the state where I know somebody, you can try and ask me also. Otherwise, you got to call, right? I look up real estate attorneys in the city, and I would say, hey, I want to do some assignments of contract. Are you familiar with that? And be wary of people lying to you. And it's very possible they will lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you. Attorneys will lie and say, sure, no problem, yeah. And then you can say something like, how many of these do you do a month? And if they say something, well, I haven't done any this month, but I did 5 last month, then they're probably telling the truth. But you want to work with an attorney who is experienced for a few reasons. Number one is you want to make sure your documents that you use, for example, assignment of contract, are enforceable, right? If a guy has never done an assignment of contract and he messes up on the assignment of contract and your buyer walks and he didn't put a really enforceable contract on there, that's a problem for you. Second of all, you want somebody who can represent you at a closing and can stand up for your rights. So I have good attorneys who literally I almost never go to closings. I either sign a resolution that gives them the right to sign for me, or I will pre-sign the documents. I don't go to the closings. And very often at the closings, things come up. Oh, you told us you were going to fix this and you didn't fix it. Typical bullshit happens all the time. And you want an attorney who's going to say, sorry, I can't reach my client. I had a situation recently. I think it was one of the last deals I closed. It was a deal. The people were driving me bananas. And they were telling me that I didn't clean the property to their liking. And at some point I said to them, you know what? Let's just not close. I want to find out what's going on here. And you know what happened? What happens at a closing is that there's a realtor who's not getting paid if it doesn't close. There's an attorney who's not getting paid if it doesn't close. And there's a lender who's not getting paid if it doesn't close. So guess what's going to happen? They're going to close. But you need to have an attorney who's willing to stand up and say, yeah, I'm not giving in to what you're asking for. If you want to not close, we won't close. Because it's going to close 99 out of 100 times. So you need somebody who's going to be good for you at the closing, and you need someone whose documents are going to stand up for you if and when. And if you're in this business long enough, it's a when, it's not an if. You will sue somebody or get sued, right? So I had a contract where my attorney put in very specific language about what as is means. As is doesn't mean anything, right? There are things I might be in the contract to buy as is, but if there's a title issue, I don't have to close on it. So in this case, he wrote specific easement issues, and I had a property in East Hampton, and I had a $100,000 deposit that I thought I was in danger of losing because I didn't want to buy the property because I went into the contract too high, and it had a problem where I could not build. I couldn't put a pool in where I needed to put a pool. And because it had a scenic easement, which is not what it had in my contract, and I got my whole deposit back. That was just that may have been luck, but the point is, if your documents aren't written right, when you get into litigation, and it's not an if you're in the business long enough, it's when, you are going to be in worse shape. So you want to use great attorneys who are experienced, who can handle the contract process well, who will generate documents that will protect you, and who will stand up for you at the closing. That's what you want. And if you use somebody who's not experienced, you're going to run into problems down the line as your business grows. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways that can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com or learntoflipandwholesale.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching any media channel, please click the thumbs up. Thank you all for liking the videos. I've been getting a lot more likes and a lot more views, so I really appreciate it. And I post 5 times a week. I almost never know what to talk about. So I'm asking you to please send me questions via comments. Um, you can ask anything. Does not have to be about the video you're watching. And if it's a simple answer, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something that I haven't covered in a while, like this, I'll do a new video on it. If it's something I've covered recently, I'll send you a link to a video on it. I think I screwed that up. If it's something I haven't covered in a while or I've never covered, I will do a brand new video on it. So thank you, a brand new video for it. Thank you very, very much for watching.